Good night, everybody. But before we get to bed, we got a certain character to talk about. We're going to be discussing the character of Wapeach, not be confused with Princess Peach. But I need to warn you very carefully that this young Peach-like character is wielding an axe and is ready to give Princess Peach 40 whacks, realize what she's done, and turn around and give Mario 41. So I'd be very, very mindful and careful not to get on her bad side. Okay. So let's begin. Okay. All right. So we're going to be discussing the character of Wapeach, okay? Now, it also seems like her name is actually going to be suggested as Preach, and I'll sort of get into that necessarily. But before I get into what that is all about, I want to go into the concept of this Peach necessarily, okay? So if you're not familiar with it, about 2 weeks ago on Fumihide Aoki's Instagram page, he basically posted a sketch design of Wapeach and stuff like that, along with like a 3D render model, okay? Now, Wapeach, so basically Fumihide Aoki, he is the one who created Waluigi, right? He's basically the design behind Waluigi, okay? And it basically turns out that during his idea of Waluigi to come into play during Mario Tennis for the 64, he basically had an idea to introduce a rival for Peach, right? And from what we actually get an understanding of like interviews that he basically did on his Instagram page on when he posted the Wapeach, I guess it's actually revealed that only the idea of a Wapeach was introduced for 64, but it wasn't until Mario Power Tennis for the GameCube that her design was initially created and stuff like that. Unfortunately, both times they were rejected by Miyamoto and stuff like that. But as far as we can we can tell, that's basically where it ends from there, with everything else just being like random interviews that have just popped up over the time, basically discussing like what happened to Wapeach, fan ideas and just stuff like that. Okay, all right. So basically 2 weeks ago, Fumihide Aoki posted on his Instagram page his design and concept of Wapeach that he was going to introduce for us and give us things like that if the character was going to be accepted and basically created as a playable character. Okay. However, it never came into fruition, okay? So, this Wapeach, as I said, she's sort of depicted as a young Peach-like character wielding an axe, okay? So, she's depicted as a young Peach-like character wearing a purple outfit and a pointy crown. She was designed with the intention of defining everyone's expectations in a good way. Her personality would have been like cute but scary. When angry, she would see Peach as a rival and be the descendant of the fallen royal family. She would have acted as the boss of Roy and Waluigi, okay? So, yes, those are basically some setups that we are given on the character of this Wapeach necessary to basically give us an idea of a general concept of like who she is and how she would actually be compared to other people. But that's basically some setups, okay? Now, there's a little bit more to go over in details like that. Now going over what her name is. So basically, if you look up in the top right corner of the sketch designs like that, you'll see two names listed. All right, one says Warupichi and the other one says Purichi. Okay, now the Warupichi is a bit of an easy concept because that has been around for since the whole idea of a Wapeach has basically come into existence. All right, and that's basically where the whole idea of a Wapeach comes into play. So Warupichi is basically taking the concept of Waru along with Peachy, which can make bad Peach. Okay, now what is the Purichi? Okay, what is that exactly? Well, Purichi is a little bit more interesting. So it is basically sort of like a wordplay on a double meaning. All right, you can either see it as pretty peach or angry peach. Okay, so going over the pretty first. Okay, so pretty in Japanese can be pronounced pretty, so Priti. However, an alternative translation of that is Purichi, so Purichi, which is basically the same translation of Purichi that we're basically discussing here, except there's a bit of a vowel difference, and basically there's a bit of a long vowel sound within a bit of a difference between the two words, okay? However, the spellings are very similar, okay? And that's basically described as pretty peach, okay? Now, the puri for angry, that actually comes from an onomatopoeia. So puri is an onomatopoeia that can mean angrily or getting angry and a bit of a huffy puffy manner. So it's kind of like a childlike anger. So instead of it being like an adult anger, it's more of like a childlike anger, like like a child who's a bit of a huffy puffy fit. Kind of like that, okay? So basically, like, yes, like, she is Peach's rival, but yet, when you look at it and you compare her, it is basically saying that she is basically a child, okay? This is, like, a child like Peach, who is basically set up to be the rival of Princess Peach. Now, I've seen people suggest that, with Peach being an adult who's mature, Wapeach is a child who's immature. I'm not exactly sure, or if I think that's a good idea to set up how a rival should be. Now, that's nothing. That's nothing for me to dish out like that. Like overall, I think the design of Wapeach is very well established and very well created and like that, and it does sound interesting. However, I don't know if this is actually the right way to set up a rival for Princess Peach. I feel like this isn't basically the best way to set it up. But that's just me personally. All right. So let's go over some reasons on why Wapeach was rejected. Because so there have been two different times when Wapeach was basically come into play. However, both times her basically concept and her idea and all that was basically rejected by Miyamoto. Oh. But there are three reasons on why she was rejected. However, I believe the third one is actually the real reason why she was rejected. So one interview basically suggests that she was rejected because Miyamoto thought that they would be too ugly and like that. However, when you really compare this Wapeach and like that, you really have to question or even ask, like, where's the ugly? But then that also brings up a good question where there are actually some people out there in the world who actually believe that Wapeach, well, they're not exactly saying that she should be ugly, but they're basically saying, like, it doesn't feel like there's enough law for this character. Like, she doesn't feel like she's got enough law in her. Like, even I kind of agree with that in a sense. Like, now, I don't personally think rivals for Peach and Daisy need to be ugly in the sense of, like, how Wario and Waluigi are. If you're someone out there who finds Wario and Waluigi attractive, good for you, and it's like that. But overall, personally, it feels like, in my opinion, like if we're going to do like a rival for Peach and Daisy, they can be cute and adorable and like that, very gorgeous. But it also feels like you need to give them, you need to like really show that they are basically like rivals for Peach and Daisy. You really need to show that, all right, these are like bad girls, like these are mean girls, all right, and that's basically the idea and the concept, all right, like really show it within their personality, really show it within their emotions, like really show it within their like typical design, all right. But really, when I look at this Wapeach, she feels more like Peach's little sister who was just raised by the wrong family, right? She still has a bit of that sweet like look and appearance, where you think that you think she might be dangerous, but in reality, she's not that dangerous. All right, that's basically how I sort of see her. Right, and come to think of it, I feel like this Wapeach actually went out to Peach and said that I am your greatest rival. I feel like Peach, I really feel like Peach would basically be saying like, "Oh, you want to be my rival? That is so adorable." That is basically how I feel like this, how Peach would basically react to that. Okay. Okay. So some reasons why she was rejected like that is because the concept of her probably being too ugly. However, another reason suggested that she was basically rejected because there was no basically characters to partner her with. Right. Now I don't really think that was I don't really think that's actually has anything to do with it like that. So that was probably just something that was just stated in interviews and stuff like that because they didn't exactly know how to answer it or they didn't know the actual answer. But another. To me, I feel like this one's actually more accurate like that. Apparently, she was rejected because of her drawing comparisons to Durango from the Yatterman series. Okay, so if you're not familiar with who Durango is part of the Durango gang within the Yatterman series, or known as the Timeboken. Okay, and she's basically the main female lead of the antagonist. All right, so basically the Durango gang are equivalent to the Team Rocket within the Pokemon anime series. Okay, that's basically the idea and the concept of, like, if you want a general idea of who these characters are, that's basically the best way to describe it. Okay. So, and there's a little bit more to go over this. So, when you look at the Rambo gang and when you compare Wapeach along with Wario and Waluigi, and you basically compare them to these Durango gang, you sort of get an idea and the concept when you look at them and compare them. It's like, okay, yeah, I can definitely see the similarities, right? I can see the connections and the point out, right? And it almost likely seems that Miyamoto didn't want to keep taking inspiration or drawing like every character from one single concept, okay? So most likely it was rejected because of that, right? But there's a little bit more to go over in this because, technically speaking, there is another Yatterman series, a sequel series called Yatterman Knight, which basically features the descendants of the original characters from the previous Yatterman series and stuff like that, okay? And there's this little girl named Leopard who is I guess she's sort of like the new lead for the Doramo gangs like that. Leopard is basically depicted as a young girl-like character, along with two guys who are basically the descendants of like Boaki and Tanzura. And when you really like look at these and when you really compare it in general, you really start to see the puzzles coming together. I mean, yes, it doesn't make a whole picture, like it doesn't make the full picture whole, but yet it's basically like it's kind of like two pictures, like two puzzle pictures that are completely different in appearance, but yet the puzzles fit perfectly. Right? It's basically like the two puzzle pieces fit together. Right? Like you can literally connect these two puzzles together, even though they make two completely different images. They basically fit within the perfect. They basically fit together, right? And that's basically that's sort of the concept and idea of what I'm basically providing. Okay. But overall, it does seem like her character was rejected because of the idea of like falling and just taking inspiration from this. Okay, now that's nothing to sneeze at, right? Like if you feel like a lot of things in life are basically designed or taking inspiration from other things, to sort of like like to basically show a bit of a a bit of a connection, like a bit of inspiration like that. But it almost seems like she was rejected because of it. Now over the years, I guess many people have actually just gave up the hope of introducing rivals for Peach and Daisy. But who knows? Maybe one of these days we will finally get rivals for them, and maybe one of these days Peach and Daisy will finally get their own rivals. Okay, I've actually made plenty of videos on my ideas and concepts of rival for Peach and Daisy and stuff like that, and I really do hope that we should. I really do hope that one of these days they can actually get them. Okay, and to me personally, I feel like only the characters of Peach and Daisy should actually get rivals. I don't think we really need rivals for every character, but I do think Peach and Daisy are the ones who are most deserving of rivals to basically counteract Wario and Waluigi and stuff like that. So that's just my overall opinions on it and how I actually think it could be. Okay, but that's basically some setups on this character Wapeach and stuff like that. Who knows? Like if be honest, she ever since she was introduced, people have been posting on Twitter and other media pages their own arts and designs and like their own illustrations of this character Wapeach. So she is basically popularing up, right? It's basically very similar to how Bowsette was created, like that. But yes, this character Wapeach is basically still growing even to this day, where people are constantly liking and posting images of Wapeach ever since she was introduced, and people are still talking about her. Yes, not constantly every hour, but they're still talking about her in general. So this character is becoming very popular. So overall, like it's a great design and great aspects, a great character to set up. But overall, I feel like she doesn't really set up the whole idea of a rival for Peach just yet. I feel like there's still some missing pieces of puzzles that aren't actually set up yet. But overall, great design, great character set up. Really enjoyable, but I also don't think that this is the idea of how a rival for Peach should actually be. But that's just me personally, okay? Now, I've actually come up with ideas of my own ideas for Peach and Daisy and stuff like that for the rivals for them, alright? My idea that I would present is the names of Ripeach and Rudaisy, alright? I've talked about them before, but just for a little clarity's sakes, in case you're not familiar with things like that. So, I'll basically go on the idea of how I actually came across the name Ripeach and Rudaisy, okay? So, how exactly did I come across the name Ripeach and Rudaisy, right? How exactly do these work, okay? Well, it's very similar to the concept of Wapeach and Wadaisy, except I decided to do something a little bit more unique, okay? Alright. So, the actual idea of basically Ripeach and Rudaisy actually came into play when I decided to take a break from their names, alright? So when I decided to take a break from coming up with ideas for Wapeach and Wadaisy's name, because to me personally, I feel like the name Wapeach and Wadaisy wasn't really going to fit. I feel like they needed their own names. Like they need to be unique and they needed their own names, alright? Instead of just taking the concept of Wapeach and Wadaisy, because when you look at it, it's very similar to how the North American audiences believed that Waluigi's name was created, okay? So for anyone out there who doesn't understand Waluigi's name, is basically a combination of the Japanese word Warui, meaning bad, along with Luigi's Japanese Ruigi, right? And when you put those together, you get Waruigi, which is basically a bad Luigi, okay? However, for the North American audiences, we always just assume that Waluigi was taking the Wa prefix and adding it to Luigi's name. And then when you compare that to Wapeach and Wadaisy, in reality, you are taking the Wa prefix and just slapping it onto their names, right? Especially when you look at the Japanese name, which is Warupichi and Warudeiji, right? You're literally removing the Ru from both names and just slapping the Wa onto the name. That's making it literally just taking the Wa and slapping it onto the prefix, so which isn't really unique and like that. It's a bit of like it's a bit of a throwaway, right? It's kind of like to me it feels a bit off, right? And going over like if we're introducing every route for every character, going with the Wa in every concept would feel kind of annoying and a bit of out of place, okay? Now that doesn't necessarily mean that I wouldn't want to use the whole Warui in the concept, or even have a way to introduce it or still keep the Wa within the name, but I feel like using the Wa as the main name just doesn't really fit, okay? Okay. So the whole idea of the name actually came to play when I decided to take a break from the actual names, okay? And I decided to focus on the emblems, okay? Now, as we are familiar with Wario and Waluigi's emblems, typically speaking, sometimes characters' emblems have changed over the times throughout different games, but the most constant one is that Wario's basically resembles a W, which is when you flip it over, it becomes an M. And then Waluigi's is basically an upside-down L, which is very similar to the Greek letter gamma, alright? And when you compare these to their basically rival counterparts, when you flip them over, they basically resemble Mario's emblem, and then Luigi's L, which is basically his emblem. Now, going over Peach and Daisy, their main emblems is Peach is basically featured with the crown, while Daisy is basically featured with the daisy, which is basically matching the daisy on her crown, her 2 earrings, and the brooch on her dress, on her chest dress. Okay. And those are basically the emblems, okay? Now, obviously, we would want to flip these over, okay? However, there's a bit of a problem here, okay? You flip over Peach's crown, it will basically look, you can still tell it's Peach's crown, but yet it will become something entirely different, okay? And that's basically what I'm aiming here for, okay? You still want to be able to tell what it could be, but at the same time, you want it to become something else entirely different to represent someone else who is a separate character, okay? And then when we get to Daisy, you flip over her emblem, it still looks the same, right? I mean, yeah, you can sort of rotate it in a different direction, but I wanted it to follow that same concept of how I'm doing for the other characters, right? I didn't want to make it stand out and be a completely different direction. To me, it would feel kind of weird. It doesn't actually feel like it's perfect, right? And yeah, you can change the background color, but at the same time, that still wouldn't work because with most times in most characters, look at if you compare how Mario is or even Peach within the Mario Kart series, the Mario Kart series with Mario Kart 8 with their clone characters, when you look at their clone characters that still use their emblems like that, but with different color backgrounds to represent the different characters themselves. Okay, so that was one problem I ran into. Okay. So then, for the heck of it, I decided to well, what if I go with the letters instead? Okay, but instead of actually keeping the letters straightforward, or because technically speaking, since Peach and Daisy were here first, I figured it'd be best to let Peach and Daisy to keep the regular P and regular D. Okay, and then I would just flip over to Peach and Daisy. Okay, however, there was a bit of a problem again with Daisy. Okay. For Peach's P, you flip over the P, it's perfectly fine. However, if you flip over D, it still looks like the same D. It doesn't change its appearance at all. Now, I need to be very clear and mention here, because I know some people will probably get in the comments, well, why not just make a small d? That could be possible, and that could actually work. But here's the problem. The letters had to be the capitalized version, okay? Let's look at Waluigi for an example, okay? Waluigi, when you spell out his name, you capitalize the W and you spell it capital W-A, small L-U-I-G-I, okay? It's not technically spelled, when you're writing it and it's like that, it's not technically spelled A, capital W-A, capital L-U-I-G-I, alright? It's not spelled like that, alright? Even though the upside down L that is used is sort of like a capitalized version of Luigi's L. And you see, that's the important thing here, is that just with every other character, the emblems or the letters are always the capitalized style version, alright? So since Daisy's D is basically the capitalized version, Rudaisy's also should be a capitalized style version of that as well, right? It shouldn't be the small portion of it, okay? And then, like I mentioned here, it didn't exactly work, okay? It was still off, okay? So then after that, I went back to the whole drawing board trying to think of what I can do, all right? How can I introduce their names? What can I actually do for their emblems, okay? And then I basically went over it and I decided, you know what if I split their emblems apart, right? So I went back to their old emblems because I figured that would be the easiest thing to do, and basically had the idea to split them apart, okay? So basically you can sort of see it as an inspiration for a yin and yang, good and bad, 2 princesses, 2 peaches, 2 daisies, and like that, 1 good, 1 bad, sort of that concept, all right? That basically set, okay? And because of that, I decided for the heck of it to look up what split and what split can mean in Japanese. What is the translation of split? And I basically come across this kanji right here, which can basically mean a ratio or percentage and stuff like that. However, when it's used as a verb, you can actually translate into waru, which can mean to crack, to split, to break. However, an alternative translation of that is wari, all right? And wari can be the conjunctive or noun form of the concept of waru, which can basically mean crack, split, and break, okay? And that's basically how the idea of the name came to play. However, when you really look at it and you really compare it, you sort of start saying, like, how does that help you at all, right? You basically are right back to where you started, right? You're really, like, literally, you're right back to where you started with the whole Bad Peach and Bad Daisy. Literally, you're just changing the name, or basically changing the alliteration of what the meaning could be from Bad Peach and Bad Daisy to Split Peach and Split Daisy, right? It doesn't, like, it feels a bit off. And you're right, right? That's technically true. But when I was looking over the names, I thought to myself, maybe we're doing this all wrong. Maybe instead of actually removing the middle parts, we should remove the first part, okay? So let me break it down by using Peach as an example, okay? So we're going to be basically breaking it down into three main parts, okay? So Wa, Ri, and Peachy, okay? Now for Peach, I decided to use the whole Wari instead of the whole Waru, right? To me, I feel like because like when basically shortening it, the Rupeach doesn't exactly fit, right? The Rupeach doesn't actually work in my opinion, right? So I went with Warupichi because I feel like Ripeach actually has a bit of a better sound effect than Rupeach, okay? But to basically continue on with the whole breakdown, so we're breaking down the three main parts, so Wa, Ri, and Peachy, which would just be one part by itself, okay? But instead of removing the middle portion and keeping the Wa and the Peach together, maybe it would be a best idea to remove the Wa instead and go with the last two letters. So Ripeachy becomes Ripeach, and the same thing with Daisy, right? You have Warudeiji. Remove the first part, but keep the second and last part, okay? Rudaisy. So Rudaisy becomes Rudaisy, okay? And that's basically the whole idea and the concept of how the name actually came to play. Like, is that, literally it really came into play because the idea of like trying to figure out how Daisy's emblem can actually be and a good way to set it up, okay? And I didn't want Daisy's to stand out as being something completely different. That's why I also decided to have Ripeach basically follow her in that concept as to make them stand out, to make them a little bit more unique, but at the same time have some connections to the original names that basically say that yes, these are definitely rivals for Peach and Daisy, okay? And you can actually see the names taking inspiration from three different things. So for Ripeach, basically takes the concept of Wario, along with Warui meaning bad, along with the concept of Wari, basically being a conjunctive or noun form of the verb Waru, which can mean to split, crack, and break. Same thing with Daisy, Waru coming from Waluigi, which is the Japanese name for Waluigi, Warui meaning bad, along with Waru, which can mean to split, crack, and break, okay? So that's basically the whole idea and the concept and stuff like that, okay? Now I'll have a link to my other video that I just did on my on my idea for Peach and Rudaisy and say that. But that's just basically a setup and basically an idea of like how the name actually came to play and why I decided to actually do it. Okay. Now overall, look, if the day ever comes that we do get rivals for Peach and Daisy, I'm going to be very excited, okay? I feel like now is the time that they deserve them. So that's basically the setup of how their names actually came into play, okay? Now, overall, I keep going back and forth on my designs and all my ideas of Wapeach and Wadaisy, or basically Ripeach and Rudaisy. One idea I did, and I'm not the only one who actually basically suggested this, alright? This has been around for like so many different people, even before this whole Wapeach design was actually introduced here, because I'm not the only one to actually think about this, that I do feel like it's important, like if we're going to introduce the rivals, I think the rivals need to represent the alternative colors, or basically the inverted colors of Peach and Daisy, okay? When you compare these to like the Mario Brothers and stuff like that, and then Peach and Daisy, Luigi wears the opposite of Mario, and Waluigi wears the opposite of Wario, and their colors are based on the RYB color wheel. However, with Peach and Daisy, Daisy doesn't wear the opposite of Peach, okay? So I always figured that maybe it would be more interesting if their rivals can actually wear the opposite of them to contrast a bit of a difference between how the Luigi wears the opposite of Mario and it's Waluigi who wears the opposite of Wario, right? But it's a bit different for the girls, okay? And their color schemes or inspirations can take inspiration from the C and Y color wheel or the RYG or the RBG color wheel, okay? So that's just basically an idea of a concept and setup, okay? Other suggestions on what I had on Ripeach and Rudaisy is I've gone over the whole concept of like how they could actually appear and like that, like how they like should they be smaller, bigger, and like that, should it be the same size? Overall, I can't really make a decision on if they should be bigger, smaller, or the same size. However, I have decided that it would be an idea to have a Rudaisy be a bit taller for Ripeach. Okay, so if you're not familiar with it, it does seem like Peach herself is set up as being taller than Daisy, right? As a matter of fact, she's like sort of set up as being like 6'1" in most cases, and Daisy is set up to be 5'11", okay? So basically, Peach is basically like about 2 inches taller than Daisy, okay? So for Ripeach and Rudaisy, I thought it would be a little bit more unique if that was a bit switched around, where it's actually Rudaisy who's taller than Ripeach, to basically, but that's just like me, alright? That's just basically my concept and my ideas and setups of how I think it should be. It's like that, where Peach is basically taller than Daisy, but it's Rudaisy who's taller than Ripeach, okay? Okay, so, I think that's all. So, yeah, so that's all for today's video. So hey, thank you so much for joining me for today's video. I'm sorry if there's any lackluster or like that, or any hard explanations I'm sort of giving like that. But overall, you know, the design is very well established. I like the designs like that. But you know, some people would point out here that this character doesn't actually feel like a rival for Peach and Daisy just yet, because like it doesn't feel like she's giving enough a wall. Like she doesn't really feel like a WA character, and I kind of agree with that. But I also don't think she needs to be WA in the sense of like how Wario and Waluigi are. Right? I feel like you can still have her be like a very pretty and adorable character, but I feel like it needs to be a little bit more of a concept. Okay. So I guess we'll end the video here. But I guess one thing to end off here is that one idea I did have, and I actually got inspiration for this from watching this other YouTuber's short video that he made, where he basically pointed out here that Peach and Daisy were made to complement Mario and Luigi. Okay, so I wrote the name down. So Aaron or I'll have a link to his video and like that I'll have a link down to his video so you can see it. All right, but overall, what he basically pointed out here is that looking at Peach, you know, Peach has basically 6 eyelashes. Okay. And when you look at Mario himself, Mario basically has 6 segments on his mustache. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a little hard to see on this one because the angle of Mario is, but let me get a better picture. Okay. So Mario has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 segments. Okay, and Peach has 6 eyelashes on each eye. All right. And then when you compare Daisy and Luigi, Luigi has 2 segments, 1, 2, and Daisy has 2 eyelashes, okay? So the idea here is that I thought it would be interesting here if Wario and Waluigi can also complement Ripeach and Rudaisy, but at the same time, it's kind of an awkward thing where it's kind of like, it's basically an awkwardness, okay, where they basically set up as like being complements of each other, like, you know, they're perfect for each other, but yet they want nothing to do with each other, okay? And see, that's the idea I have set up for Ripeach and Rudaisy, that they're basically the love rivals for Peach and Daisy, right? Ripeach and Rudaisy are in love with Mario and Luigi, but yet they're more perfect for Wario and Waluigi, but yet they want nothing to actually do with them. If that's the case, you kind of feel bad for Wario and Waluigi, right? You gotta feel bad for them. Let's see, okay. Alright. And then when looking at Wario like that, you can see that Wario mustache is like, okay. So when comparing to Wario and Waluigi and like that, when you look at their mustaches, it's like that. Waluigi's and Wario's mustache not only counteract themselves, but also Mario and Luigi as well. So if you look at Waluigi's mustache as an example, you see how it basically has basically like a straight line that basically diagonals up and like that. When you actually look at it from like a different angle, you can sort of like, it sort of not only basically compares it to like his L, but it also contradicts that by making it Luigi's L as well, okay? Also, basically, like, if you wasn't like folding this outward or something like that and you hold it to the side, you can basically see an upside down L with the other one basically being a contraction of the where basically the one on the bottom resembles the other's L, which basically Luigi's L. And then when you look at Wario's mustache, I don't have a big picture of Wario and like that, but Wario's mustache is a bit of a zigzag. There's Wario right here, like that. I'll try to bring it a little closer where you can see it. But Wario's mustache is a bit of a zigzag, and then it basically like zigzags up and then zigzags down on the bottom part, right? With the and when you look at it, it's like that. The top part basically outlines like a W appearance, while the bottom part outlines like an M. Okay, and the idea I'm having here for Ripeach and Rudaisy to basically set this up here is that Wario's basically has 6 segments, and then Waluigi basically has 2 portions. Okay. And the idea that I have here on Ripeach and Rudaisy for their eyelashes is that Ripeach will basically have like zigzag eyelashes to basically compare it to Wario, while Rudaisy will basically Rudaisy will have two eyelashes very similar to Daisy, except they will basically, just like Waluigi's, they will basically bend down. So instead of Waluigi's, they bend up, but for Rudaisy they would bend down. Okay, that's basically the setup I'm having here. Okay. Alright, so that's the setup and the concept of I have for them. It's like that. The main portions is that their dresses will be the inverted colors of Peach and Daisy. Ripeach would have 6 zigzag eyelashes, and then Rudaisy will have 2 eyelashes on each eye that basically bend downwards. Okay, to basically set up sort of similar appearance to Waluigi's mustache. Okay. Peach has basically 1 frill, Daisy has 2, Wapeach has 3, and Rudaisy has 4. Okay. They're basically set up as love rivals for Peach and Daisy. They are in love with Mario and Luigi, but yet they even though they're perfect, they're a little bit more perfect for Wario and Waluigi, but they want nothing to do with them. That's basically the setup and the concept and idea I have for Peach and Rudaisy and things like that. So hey, that's it for the video. Thank you so much for joining me. I do apologize if there was any stuttering or hard understanding of me. I really am sorry on like that, but overall, thank you so much for watching this video. If you did like it and you did enjoy it, please smash that like button and leave a comment down below on what your own ideas and thoughts of Wapeach and Wadaisy. If you would love to have these characters come forward in the future, please let me know. So, hey, that'll be it. You all have a good day. Bye now.